What's up, Amazon sellers? Welcome back to the weekly show where we share some news and answer your questions. I'm Chris Grant, and to my right is my gastrocnemian co-host, Chris Rasick. Now, for those of you who are new here, our job is to try and make your life a little bit easier as an Amazon seller. Maybe you've got questions about flipping clearance, doing retail arbitrage. Maybe you want to pull the trigger on some OA. Maybe you want to get started in wholesale, or you've just got a quandary on a curious Keepa chart. Well, we're here to help. We're also going to share some news, some stats, and maybe the occasional business maxim to try to help you be a better business owner. Chris, what is going on, man?
Not much. How's the sound, by the way? Am I all right?
Sound is all right. Yeah.
All right. Technical difficulties. I didn't anticipate how much it was going to take to get the setup on a laptop. So a little bit different than what people are used to, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I'd see people like views crazy awesome. Wow, and they get yeah. So things are a little bit different this week. We're both in undisclosed locations, and the crazy thing is Chris's view is actually the same as the one behind me. I just grabbed this spot first.
Yeah, we had to. I had to go to a lower level. I'm not. It only looks like I'm in a detention center. That is not the case. I have not been apprehended. I am still on the loose. So.
Yeah, on the beach really did mean on the beach, Shannon. Absolutely. So yeah, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of learning because of all of this, because of this corporate retreat, if you will. But before we get started, back in 2004, Jeff Bezos wrote what is now a famous line in one of his shareholder letters. He said, "Free cash flow is the most important metric that investors can track." And he really meant that. That was incredibly important. You know, while competitors were obsessing over revenue, Amazon kind of built this machine that paid suppliers after they got paid by customers. And that cash flow flywheel let Amazon grow faster than anyone else without going broke in the process. And trust me, there were some people who were trying to catch up to Amazon back in the beginning of things. They just could not get the cash flow right like Jeff and his team did. But many Amazon sellers, well, they're currently paying interest. They're burning their float. They're not running a cash flow flywheel like Amazon did. But you can, and it's not that difficult, which is why we built something for you guys. We built a free ChatGPT prompt that will build you a credit card cash float and a calendar to keep everything organized. It'll help you optimize your credit card spend. It'll help you time your purchases to extend your float as far as you can. Help you try to avoid interest like it's an IP complaint. And hopefully treat cash flow like the growth tool that it really is. No more guessing, just hopefully a little more buying power in your pocket. And you guys can go get it absolutely free over at cleartheshelf.com/credit. That's cleartheshelf.com/credit. And you can grab that absolutely free, download it immediately. And Big Jim, I don't mean to be showing off. This is just it's actually a staycation for us. And we're just here in the state of Florida. We just happen to be very lucky to have beaches in every direction that we can go to, which is lovely.
Yeah, and just a word about the credit card prompt. I feel like this is kind of the presentation may not seem that important, and it's tough to, if you don't already know, it's tough to explain the power behind something like this, because we're talking. Look at it this way, right? We joke about the Nike sock sellers and their plum cards, right? Now we make light of it, but the plum card is pushed because of the extension that it gives you and the reduction in interest, which allows you the freedom and the flexibility to sell your inventory without paying interest on it. You know, basically the big selling point of the Plum is that 60-day window that you have, interest free, essentially. You know, so that's what this prompt is. Because Chris, tell me the exact. It's in the 50s. How you can optimize your credit cards, non-Plum credit cards, with a standard 30-day cycle. Using this prompt, you can extend it to how many days?
I think the max is about 58 days if you do it just right.
There you go. Now we're talking 2 days short of the greatest benefit of a Plum card, which is extremely popular. However, you're using those on cards that accumulate perks, you know, cashback points, flexible points that you can use on travel, on views like he's got right there. You know, you can use all that stuff. And you know, we're in a crazy advantage being an inventory based business, is that you can accumulate these points. You know, so if you can not only grab the sign up bonus, which will get you first class tickets to somewhere exotic if you wanted to, you can have 2 days shy of what the Plum provides you, and you can constantly be feeding your rewards accounts with credit card perks over and over again. I mean, it's a massive free benefit that you can tweak. So I can't stress how powerful this prompt can be for so many of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, really is. Yeah. All right, let's dive into some news. And of course, if you guys have questions, please drop them in the chat. Like we want to answer your guys' questions as well. And yeah, we've got a little time. So the first piece of news here is Amazon's new AI era. The new Amazon CEO, and I don't know enough about him whether to say I like him or don't like him, but I certainly don't think he's got the if you want to call Jeff having you know, some wow factor or something, but I don't think Andy Jassy has the gravitas that Jeff Bezos has. But Andy Jassy announced this week that as the company is leaning harder into artificial intelligence, it expects a reduction in its total corporate workforce. And as I read a few articles on this, this has got employees at Amazon scared, to be well. And of course, you know, those are news articles, and you know what bleeds leads. So you know, take that with a little grain of salt. But apparently, this is not just going to be for a couple of roles. Like, they're not just trying to get AI into account health. They're trying to get AI into everything. And people really think that this could shift what corporate work even looks like at Amazon. In a memo to Amazon employees, Jassy said, "We will need fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today. Generative AI is now touching virtually every part of the business at Amazon. Amazon has 1,000 plus AI apps in development or live inside the company already. And they're planning to spend $100 billion on AI and data centers this year, up from $83 billion in 2023. $100 billion on AI at Amazon is insane. I mean, they are obviously bullish on this. And here's the thing, it's not just Amazon. Companies like Duolingo, Shopify, BT Telecom, and CrowdStrike are all cutting headcount. Not because any of those companies are struggling, but because AI can do the work faster and cheaper, and an employee with AI can do the job of 4, 5, and sometimes even 10 people. Now, why does this matter? It matters for a couple of reasons. Number one, more AI innovation is going to equal less human input, which I think for a lot of us may be a little scary. But Jassy says that AI is going to speed up how fast Amazon can build new features for customers, not necessarily for sellers, but I would imagine that may be the case as well. And we should probably expect more automation, some faster updates, and potentially we may be seeing some stricter systems in place, without as much room for the human wiggle, if you will, which could leave less room for manual workarounds or kind of gray area tactics that currently work on the platform. And with fewer humans running support, we may have to expect more bots, a little bit more automation, maybe a little bit more wait times to get account health appeals to go through until it finally gets kicked out to a person, which it sort of seems like this may already be happening a little bit. And this announcement, it follows a bunch of others. We already talked, CrowdStrike is cutting 5% of its workforce. Duolingo said it's getting rid of contractors for AI. Shopify's CEO told their managers, prove why AI can't do the job before they hire anybody. And BT Telecom says they're planning 40,000 layoffs over the next decade, mostly due to AI. And Bloomberg even estimates that 200,000 roles in banking could vanish. Now, this sounds dystopian at first, but I do want to remind you that, at least in my opinion, AI is going to mean more opportunities for those who are willing to learn fast, those who are willing to iterate, those who are willing to adapt, and those who are willing to use the tools before they get replaced by them. Now, this is whether you're in a 9-to-5 job or even in your own business. Like, I think that you should be touching AI every single day in some way. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be quite as dystopian as it is. We've got to remember that, like, this is not the first time that tech has disrupted everything. It's not even the second time, you know? I mean, if we go all the way back to the cotton gin, like, this is a cycle that repeats itself over and over. Let's go back further. Let's go back to the Gutenberg press. Like, this is something that repeats itself over and over and over again. And you either need to hop on the train or, get left behind.
Yeah, this is. I feel bad that we've kind of already hit a certain level of saturation with AI news.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid that the useful parts of it are getting lost. Or you'll miss it while you're rolling your eyes as you hear the term AI yet again. But number one, a good point. You couldn't just stop at the cotton gin. You went. I had Eli Whitney, locked in. You went even further to the stuff that I couldn't quite remember from history class. But the great story that I heard that I always fall back on because I'll be honest with you, I'm older. This feels it feels too fast for me.
It does feel fast.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like the VCR clock that I'm gonna have to get a younger generation in my family to help me set. This is, that's kind of how I feel at times if you let it get to me, or if I let it get to me. But the one the best point that I've heard so far about AI and job replacement and whatnot was a story they told about Henry Ford, and when he installed the assembly line, right, which made production so much faster. He was able to pump out all these cars, revolutionize the entire industry, or put the industry on the map, I should say. There wasn't really much of one before that, so he seriously put it on the map, and of course there was a backlash, right? There was the people that love their horses and like, what is this crap? We don't need this. My horse is fine. Jethro's fine out in the barn. You had all that, and then you had the minds of the time backlash against it because it's going to take all these jobs. Right. And it did. Right. No one's saying no, it didn't take the jobs. But what happened was there were so many cars being produced. No one had the foresight to realize the other jobs that many cars being in existence would create, and rightfully so, and it's not a knock on anybody for not having the vision to see, because we didn't know this was all brand new. But think about autos in general. Now you need the braking mechanisms need to be made, and they everything was improved over time. Take it braking. We eventually had more sophisticated steering. We started to have safety features. Eventually seatbelt factories needed to come about. We eventually had to put audio systems into these cars, and lights and so it created all these other smaller factories. And in the end, it was such a massive net increase in jobs, but if you kind of put the blinders on, you're like, oh, I don't like this. This is going to kill a bunch of jobs. That's not quite the whole story, So that's what I think of when I start getting overwhelmed with all this AI. But that said, I do think it's in our best interest as sellers to experiment with it. I don't feel like we need to know exactly everything that's going on with it. It's going to move too fast to keep up, but we don't need to keep up with absolutely everything. But there are beginning to be some objectively profitable things that AI can do for your business. So I would suggest keeping an open mind. Maybe sign up to a couple newsletters. Chris, do you have a favorite?
TLDR is pretty good. And then actually most of it I get off of, because here's the thing, we're really dealing mostly right now with LLMs or large language models and chat. Now AI agents are really, they're really kind of coming into their own right now, but I'm not sure they're quite there yet. And we've got MCPs, which I still don't quite understand. And so, but I need to keep track of AI agents, and most of that stuff I'm getting from Twitter.
Yeah. Twitter is by far, Twitter's better than any of the newsletters that I've subscribed to. And I think I have about 3 different ones now. Not all of it's relevant, but I mean, the great thing is if you're on something like Twitter, the customization that you can do with Twitter as far as what you see in your feed, you can start following some people, and probably more than just Twitter, but that's kind of our favorite for being able to dial in the subject matter that we're looking for. But you can follow and people are sharing some of the stuff because it is so cool. And it's like, oh, look what I can do. And it's in our best interest to spend a little bit of time with AI. I've mentioned it before. I just did it about an hour ago as I was sourcing. I put in the Amazon link and I put in the link to, it was Home Depot at the time. And I asked Perplexity, is this the same item? And it went into each website. It took all the details, scrubbed them against each other and said, yeah, this is. And the interesting thing was, it was a Milwaukee tool, right? And Milwaukee has 2 digits dash 2 digits dash 4 digits. That's their product naming conventions. And the one was like 1250A, and then the other one was 1250G on the Amazon page. And Perplexity actually told me that there is no such thing as 1250G. It said it doesn't exist in the entire Milwaukee catalog. It doesn't exist on any store. It went out and looked at all this stuff. So it basically discovered that something was fat fingered on the Amazon listing when the listing was created. And now I'm 99.9% more confident that this is a matching product, and I'm going to go ahead and buy it and send it in with a clear conscience.
Yeah, that alone is incredibly powerful. Now I've got 2 things here. You brought up Henry Ford, so I'm going to tell another Henry Ford story. One thing I would caution everyone is, even though we can now have AI help us significantly in our business, I would be careful and don't allow that to take away from time thinking about your business. Because AI is not to the point yet, and we're not to the phase of quantum computing where it's just going to be able to figure everything out for us. You still need to have a human touch. And I bring up Henry Ford because Henry Ford, actually, there's a story where he had some investors or someone from the board come and meet him at his office. And down the hall from Henry Ford's office was a guy who was just sitting with his feet up and not doing anything, at least not looking like he did anything. And so the board member asked him, he said, "Hey, Henry," he's like, "who is that?" And he tells them, and he's like, "Why are his feet up?" And he's like, "Well, because." And he's like, "Well, how much does he get paid?" And at the time, he was getting paid $50,000 a year. And the board member was just incensed. He couldn't believe that this guy was getting paid so much. And he's like, "Well, why would you pay this person to do nothing all day?" And Henry Ford looks at him and says, "That guy had one idea that saved me $10 million. And he had his feet up on his desk just like that when he came up with the idea." So make sure to take some thinking time. Now, the second question, or this question I have for you, this is going to skirt on the territory of a philosophical discussion, and maybe it's something for off camera. But if we look at the arc of history, of human history, like we are getting, things are becoming easier, things are becoming better. World is becoming safer objectively. I know it doesn't always seem like that when we read the news and doom scroll and stuff like that, but objectively, things are getting better. So why, when something like AI comes around, do we automatically go to, well, we're cooked? It's been a good run, but this is the one that takes us down.
Is it anything more than simply humans hating change?
Could be.
That's probably it's definitely the most succinct answer that I can provide. But you see it with pretty much everything. When something new, when something comes in that disrupts the the status quo, there's always going to be contrarians. I think it's just it's just our nature. I think it has to do with the negative being sticky. We talk about Amazon. We could probably poll our audience right now, and most would say Amazon is cooked. Or it's not an opportunity anymore. And a lot of that is kind of fixating on the negative parts of it. Because we've taken so much of the good for granted for so long. And that's old news. We just want we just want things to just keep going the way they are. So I think it's just our human nature, essentially.
Yeah. All right. Let's pop into the next one. But again, if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. We will get to those here very shortly. This next piece of news is good news. Retail sales just hit $260 billion. The U.S. consumer, honestly, must be the most resilient market segment in the entire world, because May retail numbers are up, even though we sort of had this kind of spring forward purchasing blitz from people that were moving buys ahead due to a lot of worries over tariffs. So here are the numbers. May 2025, total retail sales, $259.93 billion. That growth year over year is 5.2% growth year over year. That is core retail segments only. So it excludes food, it excludes auto, it excludes fuel. It's clothing, sporting goods, electronics, toys, all the things that we like to sell. E-commerce sales were up 6.3% year over year. Some of the categories that won big: home furnishings. We know that a lot of people pushed home furnishing purchases forward in the year a little bit. Typically, those are kind of like midsummer purchases. Apparel was up 5.8%. General merchandise, 3.5%. Sporting goods, 2.8%. Makes sense going into the summer season and vacation and things like that. And heck, pickleball seems to be absolutely everywhere, so that was probably good for 1% of it. Electronics was down 1.2% year over year. I think people are just holding off a little longer to replace electronics these days. And then the biggest loser of them all is department stores. 2.8% decline in sales at department stores. And Chris and I talked a little bit earlier today that we're in the discount retailer era, with Nordstrom Rack opening up 25 locations this year, and Ross and TJ Maxx, they're always opening. So the National Retail Federation pegged total retail growth at 4.2% year over year. And then, of course, they talked about, well, why are these numbers this way? So, of course, there was the pull forward spending with tariff uncertainty, but there have also been a lot of promos. Major retailers have done a lot of promos, including Amazon, Wayfair, Target, Walmart, trying to hold prices down and hold prices steady, and clearing out older SKUs. Matter of fact, there's one particular retailer, and I won't say who on this live, but there's one particular retailer that has had a 50% off their clearance, which is normally just something they do a couple times a year. And I know they've already had it twice, I think in Q2, which is unusual. So we're seeing sales still tick up, which is solid. And we've got Prime Day coming, which means if people are wanting to look for deals, it's very likely they're going to spend money. We've got back to school season, which is literally right around the corner. And then we move directly into Q3, and we're going to have Halloween, the second biggest holiday of the year, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I'm bullish on the rest of the year so far.
Yeah, this is interesting because it certainly feels like numbers that can still easily be built upon.
Mm-hmm.
Now the one thing I'm curious, the two things that stick out to me. One is the massive increase in home furnishings, but a negative 1.2% in electronics.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't make sense to me, because if tariff uncertainty is driving the home furnishings, well, I mean, in my mind, electronics are going to be affected by tariffs probably more than anything. So if I was looking to upgrade, I don't know, some electronic device that maybe it's a couple generations old in the Bluetooth software or whatever it may be, I would have thought that would have gone along with home furnishings, or seeing home furnishings up that much. It's strange that there was a disconnect, that the one category thrived while the other kind of sank a little bit lower. But
yeah,
and we may still see, but I can also understand people just saying, I'll stick with what I got. I think home furnishing probably has a bigger impact on short-term quality of life. If you walk into and you have a new piece or something like that, it's probably going to make you feel a little bit better. So it may actually be more connected to apparel. I want to bring up apparel, 5.8% increase. Now, obviously, it's a major shift in weather for a large portion of the country, but I am curious how much of that number is GLP-1.
Oh,
are we starting
interesting.
Are we starting to see the effects? Because if it is responsible for some of that number, that is a number that we could see a plus with a crooked number quarter after quarter or month after month, over and over and over again. It could be insulated. It won't matter what season it is. It'll just be a necessary purchase. I'm curious about that.
That is a really I like that idea, and because we're seeing effects of GLP-1s in other places already. The average order tickets are down at sit down restaurants. People who are running restaurants are specifically blaming GLP-1s for things going on in that industry. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's a sneaky good opportunity in the clothing category right now.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go down a little rabbit hole for that. That one's a good one. All right, guys. And one last reminder, we are going to get to your questions. So if you've got them, drop them. It's a little quiet in the chat, other than talking about the background. But this last piece, I was a little stuck for news this week. It's honestly, it's a little bit of a slow news week. Um, but I came up with an idea while I was out on the beach with the family. So um, I'm going to start this segment by saying that this show is for entertainment purposes only. And neither of us are neither qualified enough nor smart enough to come to for financial, legal, or marriage advice. Okay. But let's talk how you can deduct your corporate retreat on your taxes. Okay. Now you have to remember the IRS may be dumb, but the IRS isn't stupid. Okay. So if you try to pass off your vacation to Cabo with your cousins as a business expense, expect an audit and maybe even some shiny new bracelets and a forced vacation to Club Fed. But let's talk about what actually qualifies, like what expenses you can deduct, how to handle family members, and some common traps that sellers walk into. Okay. So, what makes a corporate retreat deductible? Well, number one, it needs to serve a clear business purpose. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, I need to go sourcing. No, not necessarily. You can do strategic planning, you can do team building, you can work on operational improvements, you could implement AI strategies into your business. Okay. These need to be ordinary and necessary for your line of work. They cannot be lavish or extravagant. Now, the ordinary and necessary is, it's a little subjective. Like, you know, there's a lot of things that are ordinary and necessary. It needs to be well documented. Agendas, receipts, notes. Those are going to be your best audit defense. The rule of thumb is that like 60% or more of the agenda must be business focused. So what can you deduct? Well, a lot. Travel, airfare, gas, rental cars, okay? Lodging, hotels for employees and owners during the business portion. Meals are 50% deductible if they're not over the top and business related. I actually think that information might be a little wrong. I think business meals are now 100% deductible, but I'll need to go and double check the IRS code. I had some help writing this from AI. Meeting rooms and AV gear, of course, is 100% deductible. Any workbooks or handouts, that's all deductible. Now, you cannot deduct personal days. You cannot deduct non-employee family costs or anything like that. But if you do bring your family, if they are a bona fide employee and they're doing real work at the retreat, absolutely deductible. Can a husband and a wife go on a corporate retreat? Yes, they can. You just want to make sure that the husband and wife both own the business, work in the business, etc. If they're not actually on the payroll or they don't have any legitimate business role, you cannot really deduct for them. Okay. So, like, what's a real world example? Well, let's say your business hosts a retreat in Scottsdale. I'm not sure why people would go there, but whatever. You rent a house with space to work. You've got airfare for all of the employees. You've got lodging for 3 nights. You've got meals. You've got the meeting rental space if it's away from the place where you're staying. Those are all good to go. However, you cannot deduct the spa day that you and your wife go on. Like, that just won't work. Okay. The red flags that the IRS is going to look for: no agenda, only family in attendance, like no documentation, over the top luxury lodging. Not going to get in trouble with an Airbnb if it has space to work or anything like that. You call it a board meeting, but you don't have any minutes of the business meetings conducted. Those are all things that are going to be red flags. So if you're going to do something like this, make sure that you've got a printed agenda with times, topics, and goals. Make sure you invite everyone who has a hand in the business. You could hire an outside speaker. That's really not necessary. but it would strengthen the business case and kind of be cool. And then you need to separate any leisure from the business expenses. Make sure to keep your receipts, and you should be good to go. And that's how you can go and kind of vacation, have a working vacation, and then have it be a corporate retreat and take it off on your taxes. And again, always talk to your CPA before doing something like this. Like, don't take it from a couple of schlubs on the internet.
So are you going to follow this up with a Calendly link for speaking engagements in the Caribbean?
Yeah, you absolutely can hire me for a speaking engagement.
All right. So the question is, let's maybe simplify it a little bit. What about a sourcing trip? You know, what if I wanted to take a drive and say there was, you know, Columbus is from my home base about 2 hours away. And, you know, say I wanted to source outlet malls there. So I have travel expenses. I would need a hotel room if I'm going to stay overnight for the sourcing trip. And one hotel room, a big enough one, could fit my wife and kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so essentially, what about the trips, you know, that you can take where you could bring your family and there's no additional expense, like that hypothetical is?
Yeah,
would that be okay?
absolutely. That'd be 100% okay. You'd be able to take the mileage deduction. I think that one's better than actually, you know, gas. The mileage deduction is pretty high these days. You'd be able to, of course, expense the inventory. You'd be able to get a hotel room that was big enough to pack boxes in, that also is big enough to house your family. That would absolutely be doable. And you could, I mean, heck, you could road trip your way across the United States doing that kind of stuff and probably pay for the vacation that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, but you know, the talking to your CPA is, it's a very important point because, you know, I think, just based on like, you know, social media groups that we're in, you know, people are always looking for, CPAs that understand what we do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that can be really important. You know, it's probably worth your time to find someone that will listen, you know, and that you could actually have a conversation instead of, you know, just rushing you out of, you know, before their next appointment or something like that. You know, if you could really kind of get into the weeds, it's a pretty nice perk, you know, to be able to do stuff like this.
Yeah. Being a business owner and actually having like a corporate structure is the way to go. So like, and I don't say this, you know, just to try to tell everybody to go, you know, stop being a sole proprietor and get an LLC or whatever. But like, if you're taking business seriously, even if this is a side business, you know, but if you're taking business seriously, you should find out, you know, what the best structure is for your circumstance, because being a business owner is the best tax strategy under the sun. Like, there is so much that you can do to avoid taxes legally. And in my opinion, it's your duty. Like, there's a reason those laws are on the books. It's your job to jump through those hoops that they created and get those deductions.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's not only, you know, when you talk to people, if you read anything on the terms or on the topic of wealth creation, you know, pretty much everyone will have business ownership very, very high on the list. And it's not just the ability to sell the business. You know, I mean, obviously that's certainly going to help the bottom line, or, you know, help your net worth. But it's also stuff like this. It's also, you know, being able to take advantage of and navigate your way through these things that exist, because they exist for a reason. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not 100% of the talk about tax deductions is wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know, like it's there for a reason. You know, so it's it definitely behooves us to understand it and be in a position when applicable to take advantage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's answer some of your guys' questions. Um, uh, but I do have to take 1 second. I see that Shannon is here in the comments. I hope that she's still here. Uh, a little earlier today, Shannon, um, and she said here on the beach really meant on the beach. Yeah, it did. But Shannon sent me an incredibly generous email, and I don't know if I'm allowed to share everything. I don't know if I can share the images that she sent over or anything like that. I did show them to Chris. Yeah, but she recently hit $1 million in sales over the last 12 months. First of all, Shannon, congratulations. I know how Shannon sources for the most part, and it is $1 million is huge. It's absolutely huge, and she sent me a very nice note, and I just wanted to say thank you. It made me feel pretty good. So I appreciate you, Shannon, and congratulations.
Yeah, and Shannon, if I may, hopefully you don't mind that he shared it with me, but I found it incredibly inspiring. I'm a huge fan of Chris and his curriculum. So I'm trying, but to see that, that's so awesome because Shannon, I remember, going through OA challenges. I remember seeing you in the chats, and it's Chris. I can't imagine how awesome it is for you to see someone that was around early on in your OA challenge, and see someone take your curriculum, take your education, the things that you provide, and have that much success. I mean, Shannon, that is so awesome. I hope you're seriously walking around with a huge smile because I find it inspiring and incredibly impressive. Congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Big Jim, with all the AI options available, is ChatGPT the best for our usage? It is very likely the best one overall, I would imagine, and their rate of iteration is pretty high. However, it's $20 a month for not the pro plan, but like the paid plan. The individual paid plan is $20 a month. Perplexity is also another $20 a month. I think you should probably have both of them. I like to treat Perplexity as more of a search engine, but it does have multiple models available in it. You can use Claude, you can use Grok, you can use DeepSeek, which I would not install on my own computer just for security reasons, and I don't know enough to say whether or not it's safe or not. But you can use all these different models. You can do deep research, and it pulls all the notes as to where it found that information, which ChatGPT will do as well. But I think that Perplexity is better for search. I think ChatGPT is better for a lot of other things. It's better for, rewriting a business email. It's better for, maybe helping you come up with some business plans or things like that. But I would also work them against each other. Have ChatGPT do something, and then take it over to Perplexity and do the exact same thing, and be like, hey, ChatGPT gave me this. I want you to beat it, and that's okay to do that. And then there's a couple of I did this for our private group last week, but we talked about how to properly build a prompt for AI, because your results are only going to be as good as your inputs, and most of our inputs, they kind of suck. Mine sucked for a really long time, and I'm getting better and better about my inputs into AI, and they need to be structured appropriately to get the absolute best results possible.
Yeah, I think the key with AI is picking one or two. I do agree with picking two. I pay for both ChatGPT and Perplexity, the Pro plan. The nice thing is, well, let's start with the difficult thing. You're going to hear a lot of people have contrived opinions of which one's better, and ooh, this one is, RIP Perplexity. I just saw that the other day, and then they explained something, and it's like, and they made a pretty decent case if you weren't in the weeds already, if you weren't, familiar with the product. But I am basically sticking with, I'm the same as Chris. I have Perplexity and I pay for ChatGPT. The way I look at it is Perplexity was the first one to actually provide links to the citations that they use to craft the answer that they gave you, which not long ago, in terms of AI, it was ancient history, but like as far as actual calendar goes, it wasn't that long ago to where they were the first and only ones, and then the contrarian voices with AI, they harped on the hallucinations, and they're like, oh, you can't trust it, and it just makes stuff up, and then what we learned, okay, it's strong in this, and then it kind of made sense that it wouldn't be good at math, because why would a large language model understand math? It's not a calculator. It's simply taking verbiage and content from huge chunks of the internet and the written word that it was fed, and then it's basically just really intelligent predictive text, which would make sense that it would be no good at math. That makes perfect sense when you think about it that way. So you're going to have people with affiliate links to a certain AI saying it's great, it's the ChatGPT killer, it's the Perplexity killer, blah blah blah. Take that stuff with a grain of salt. The good thing is that everything's moving so fast is that if you pick a couple and you get familiar with them and you can be productive, even if they're not the first one to have something, they will eventually add it, because this is the type of thing where there's so much overlap eventually. Maybe somebody comes out with something and it's really, really cool and everybody gets excited and it's like, oh, you got to move over here. Well, give it a minute, because now ChatGPT will give you citations too. They do what Perplexity did, and you'll hear people out there that say, well, Perplexity is getting left in the dust, because everybody can do what it can do now. That's the scenario that's just going to go over and over and over again. So, but if you stick with it and you use it, here's how I use it. Perplexity is my search engine. It's the technical stuff. Perplexity has Perplexity Labs, which is basically a massive research engine, and it will do the just incredibly big research projects for you. It will create massive campaigns, and it'll just give you so much information. You're seriously dangerous with that capability. I think ChatGPT, I'm not sure. I think you're limited on the actual research model, right? Even if you're on the plan.
You get a certain amount of researches per month with theirs, but I do think that Perplexity goes deeper.
Yeah. But then ChatGPT is, I kind of got away from ChatGPT just because I was having such success with Perplexity and using it so much. I kind of got away from it, and I recently went back to it. And the thing I took for granted was how good ChatGPT is on a conversation level. And that has its own advantages, especially when you're doing follow-up, because I think there's a huge amount of power not only in your prompt, but I think there's even more power in the follow-up that you give the AI that you're using. If they give you an answer, you can tell it, no, that's generic. I need something more profound, and it will respond and it'll give you something better. And ChatGPT is, especially in the history with ChatGPT, it remembers everything that you write, which can be key. It'll know if you use it for a period of time, it'll remember that you're an Amazon seller. I had it bring something up a brand new conversation, and it actually said, knowing that you have OA leads 24/7, this is relevant because, and it caught me off guard, because I didn't mention it. It was just kind of a whatever task, and I just popped it up and typed it in. But it actually went back in the history, remembered who I was, what I do, which you can imagine how useful that is.
Absolutely. Miguel, looks like you're in the Caribbean. No, far from it. Just sunny Central Florida is where we are. Let's see here. Oh, and Big Jim. Yeah, GLP-1. Yeah, you could call it the fat shot. It's Ozempic and all of those drugs that are supposed to help you lose weight. Also do a lot of other things too. There's some. There could be a lot of good long term from this.
I mean, it could. That's an understatement. It could be one of the biggest economic impacts in a generation, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You didn't get away with it, Chris. Did you do a live sourcing on Monday?
Yeah, Heather, I apologize. We had a flight delay. That was the day that I got into Florida. It was Monday night, and I would have had enough time if we actually had to go back into the gate. We actually pulled out to the runway and we were waiting in line. And then the pilot came on and said, we actually have to pull back to the gate. We had to wait for a gate to open up so that the mechanics could actually look at the plane. So, so we sat, and of course they don't let us leave the plane. That was nice of them. Just let that anxiety brew, as mechanics are working on the wing of the plane. So that killed an extra hour, and I was under the gun, and I just couldn't get to it. So I do apologize. I fully intended to. I don't like breaking the string. It's important to me to show up every week. So I am disappointed, but back to it. I have too much fun doing it. It's a good time. So, and thank you for asking about it. It makes me feel good that you were looking for it. So,
I'm going to wreck your name, so I apologize, but I'm going to say it's Tanya. Do you keep a rotating set of brands you regularly look for and restock when deals pop up, and keep updating that list as things change with price wars and listing crashes? So, yes and no, but it's because it's normally a brand because I've sourced that brand's website or something. For the most part, I'm pretty brand agnostic. I don't care. I'll sell it if it's Nike. I'll sell it if it's Adidas. I'll sell it if it's whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what it is if there's profit and a reason to buy something. And then it's, in my opinion, it's best to try to go back and restock all of those. I was actually just doing that the other day. I went all the way back to all the leads purchased in August and started going through them. And then once I was done with those, went into September. And then what you can do from there is you've got a starting point. You've got actually a couple of starting points. Okay. If you're going back and looking through the things that you've sold in the past. Number one, you've got a site, and you could rabbit trail down that site. Maybe there's a sale going on. Maybe you know of a coupon code that still works. Even if that particular product isn't still profitable, you could probably find another. Outside of that, you're also going to have the things that Amazon recommends to buyers on the website. Frequently sold with. That's going to change over time. It's not always going to be the same. And then also you're going to have the sellers that have been on the listing, both before, during your time there, and currently on the listing. And now you've got a bunch of storefronts that you could also stalk. And so, I mean, there's so many ways that you could go about this that there's no reason to never not have some sort of rabbit trail to go down.
Yeah, I think the key is, it's a. How can we just go with Tanya? I feel confident in the second half of your name.
That's a good idea.
Sorry if this makes your blood boil, but I'll call you Tanya. There's an ebb and a flow to the sourcing. I still find it amazing what you get so used to, because they call it the curse of knowledge. You can't imagine not knowing what you've learned, which makes it difficult to help beginners. That's why people, get frustrated with, newbie questions in social media groups that they've been in for a few years, because they don't remember what it's like to not know what they know now. But that's both good and bad, because you need to find the balance between remembering to go back over the paths that you've walked already, and think replens, think, especially stores, you're going to come to a point, every seller is going to come to a point where it's almost more important to find stores that you can get the quantity that you need to buy to maintain your numbers. That becomes more important than profitable products even. It's because it can get tough. If you get to a certain level, getting enough units in, it becomes the bigger challenge. So you need to make sure that you don't lose. Make sure you put your breadcrumbs down so you can find your way back to the things that worked. But at the same time, you're going back over these same paths over and over again. So you need to make sure you don't get jaded, that you don't get complacent. That's why it's important to have a network, have people that you can talk to, because I'm trying to take advantage of it here, talking to Chris, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this brand? Because there are certain brands that I throw my head back and roll my eyes. It's like, oh, this crap again. Like, I'm so sick of seeing this brand. But you have to be able to bounce it off somebody and say, okay, what's the deal with this? What's your opinion of this brand? Because you're almost ready to write it off completely, but then it could be somebody's opinion or a fresh set of eyes that makes you realize that there's some units under this brand. There's some products under this brand that I should be buying, and you go, you're right. You know what? I got stuck in a rut, or just, I got sick of seeing the same thing over again. And I kind of lost the plot a little bit, and that can put you back on track. So it's a little bit of building a routine, but make sure you're still keeping your eyes open as you walk down that path over and over again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, doesn't look like there's any more questions, but I want to tell you a little story, Chris. I went for a little walk this morning, down by the beach, and I got hit by a violin. Then I got hit by a cello. Then I got hit by a piano. And I think it may have been an orchestrated attack.
Oh, man.
I didn't even like that one. I didn't even care for it. I apologize. It'll be better on Sunday, guys. I promise. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Going to get out of here and go get some other things done, hang out with the family and things like that. Our 60% of the day is done. So, all right, guys, that's it. We'll see you back here on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. to do this thing all over again. Until then, good selling, everybody.